All right, so diving in today, a deep dive, really into one of those events that, well, it just never loses its grip, does it? The
Yeah.
sinking of the Titanic, April 15th, 1912,
Right.
over a century ago. But
Still so much to unpack. It's almost like it's more than just a shipwreck, isn't it? The Titanic, I mean.
right, like the symbol of, I don't know, ambition, maybe,
Yeah.
Edwardian era, pushing the limits of what they could build, and then
Largest ship of its time, maiden voyage, Southampton to New York, and it all goes so wrong.
yeah. And we're talking, this wasn't just a few people lost. This is estimated 2,224 souls on board. Over 1,500 died.
One of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters ever. Really puts it in perspective.
And that's what we're going to try to do today, right? Get some perspective. We've got the Wikipedia article, tons of detail there.
Yeah.
And, well, let's just try to piece it together. The events, the factors, what it meant then, what it means now.
Huge task, but fascinating.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene. April 14th, 1912, the day before the disaster. What's the vibe like on board? Is it all, champagne and...
Well, initially, yeah, probably a lot of that. Excitement, maiden voyage, luxury liner. But things start to get interesting, let's say, as the day goes on.
Interesting how?
They received warnings, ice warnings, 6 of them.
Wait, 6?
Yeah.
From other ships?
Yep. Think about it back then. No radar, no satellites. It was all word of mouth, basically, ship to ship.
Yeah.
So you've got the Coronia, Baltic, America. They all send messages about ice.
Icebergs.
Icebergs, growlers, those smaller chunks, and even like whole ice fields they're having to navigate around.
And the Titanic's just, like, full steam ahead.
Well, that's where it gets tricky. Not all those warnings, they didn't all make it to the bridge.
What do you mean? Like, they weren't delivered?
Kind of. See, the radio operators on the Titanic, they weren't actually Titanic crew. They worked for the Marconi Company, and their main job was passenger messages, telegrams, all that.
So they're, like, busy sending, having a lovely time, wish you were here, wow.
Well, ice warnings are piling up. Yeah, it was a different time. And to make matters worse, the America earlier that day had a radio breakdown. So their big warning, 1:45 p.m., about 2 huge icebergs.
Never got through.
Exactly. And then later, the Masaba sends a detailed message. 9:40 p.m., heavy pack ice, numerous large icebergs. But the Titanic senior operator, Jack Phillips, he's swamped. Backlog from the America issue, tons of passenger messages.
So that one gets missed, too.
It does. And then there's the Californian. This is where it gets really, I don't even know what word to use.
Okay, the Californian. Closer to the Titanic, right?
Much closer. They actually signal the Titanic at 10:30 p.m., saying they've stopped for the night, surrounded by an ice field. But Phillips, on the Titanic, he's trying to get a message through to Cape Race, and the Californian's signal is strong, interfering.
Oh, no.
So he cuts him off, tells him to shut up. I mean, imagine that.
Wow. Just, wow. So they know there's ice out there, multiple warnings, and
But
yet...
they're still steaming along at 22 knots, about 2 knots shy of their max.
Which, to them, was normal, right?
Totally normal. Standard practice back then. They relied on the lookouts. There's even testimony later from 5th Officer Lowe, something like, go ahead, trust the lookouts. They'll spot the ice in time.
A different mindset.
Completely. And to make matters even worse, those ice conditions that April, they were brutal. Worse than something like 50 years.
Why was that?
Mild winter in Greenland, more icebergs breaking off, drifting south into the shipping lanes. The lookouts were facing, well, a nightmare scenario.
Setting the stage for disaster. And then it happens. 11:40 p.m., ship's time.
The lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, high up in the crow's nest. They see it. Iceberg, dead ahead.
No binoculars, right? That's always.
That's part of the story that gets you, right? There'd been a last-minute officer switch in Southampton. Binoculars were locked up. Key was missing.
So what happens?
Fleet rings the lookout bell. 3 times that's the signal. Something's there. And he calls the bridge. Iceberg, right ahead. Famous words.
Chilling. What's the reaction of the bridge?
First Officer Murdoch's in charge. He orders hard to starboard. Now, this is where it gets confusing for us today.
How so?
Hard to starboard back then. It meant turning left. Opposite of today. It's a tiller thing, old steering mechanisms.
So they're turning.
Away from the iceberg, yes. But there's debate about the engines. Did Murdoch order full astern to reverse or just to stop them? Some evidence suggests just to stop.
Why does that matter?
Because stopping the propellers would reduce water flow over the rudder, making the turn less effective. Some experts think maybe if they'd kept going forward while turning, maybe they clear the iceberg or at least lessen the impact.
It's like every little decision.
Huge consequences. And even then, the steering itself wasn't instant. Steam-powered could take 30 seconds to fully turn. Every second counts in that situation.
So they hit.
A glancing blow, yeah. Along the starboard side, underwater spur of the iceberg scrapes along for, they estimated about 7 seconds.
People on board must have felt that.
Some on the forward decks actually reported seeing chunks of ice falling on deck. It didn't seem that bad initially to many.
7 seconds. You would think that'd be enough to sink the unsinkable ship.
Right. At first, everyone thought, massive gash in the hull, right? But later, they looked at the wreck, used ultrasound. Different story. Edward Wilding, the shipbuilder, testified later that the total area open to the sea was maybe 12 square feet total.
12 square feet? That's tiny.
It wasn't one big tear. It was a series of smaller openings, about 300 feet along the hull, like rivet holes popping open, plates buckling under the stress.
More like punctures than a slice.
Exactly. Like imagine driving over a bunch of spikes, each one causing a small but significant leak.
And the watertight compartments. They couldn't hold that back.
So Titanic had 16 of those compartments, designed to stay afloat even with 4 flooded. But the Iceberg hit 6. 4 peak tank, 3 cargo holds, 2 boiler rooms.
Exceeded what it could handle.
And the compartments, they weren't sealed at the top. They went up to E deck, some higher. But as one filled, the ship tilted, water spilled over into the next one. Domino effect.
So it was a matter of time. What happens next?
Captain Smith rushes to the bridge, calls Thomas Andrews, the shipbuilder, who was on board observing the maiden voyage. They assess the damage. It's bad. 5-degree list to starboard, bow dipping down.
Sinking already?
Yeah, and fast. They go below deck, cargo hold flooding, mailroom, even the squash court, water pouring into the boiler rooms, estimated 7 long tons of water per second. The pumps couldn't keep up.
7 tons per second. That's
unimaginable, isn't it? Andrews tells Smith straight up, the ship's doomed. 1 to 2 hours, tops.
1 to 2 hours. So what do they do?
About 12:05 a.m., Captain Smith gives the order. Uncover the lifeboats, passengers to boat stations. He also tells the radio operators, Phillips and Bride, send the distress calls.
CQD
and SOS. Bride had been pushing for them to use SOS, newer signal.
And they get a response.
Several ships pick it up. The Carpathia, under Captain Rostron, was closest, 58 miles away, but she was smaller, slower, even at top speed, 4 hours to get there.
4 hours. And the Mountain Temple.
Tried to respond, but got blocked by ice. Shows you how treacherous it was out there that night.
The Californian, they're right there.
This is the part that, well, it's almost too much sometimes. The Californian, Captain Lord, they'd stopped in an ice field around 10:00 p.m. Their radio operator had gone off duty at 11:30. 10 minutes before the Titanic hit.
So that they didn't even hear the calls.
They did not. But here's the thing. The Californians officers saw rockets from the Titanic around 12:45 a.m., white rockets. Second Officer Stone saw 5 of them, reported it to Captain Lord. Lord didn't act. He questioned the rockets, what ship they might be from, didn't call the radio operator back, didn't go investigate. By the time they did, it was too late.
Unbelievable. Meanwhile, on the Titanic, abandoned ship. What about those lifeboats?
Here's the thing. Titanic had 20 lifeboats, 16 wooden, 4 collapsible, total capacity, 1,178 people. Barely half of those on board.
Not enough.
Not nearly enough. Back then, regulations were based on the ship size, not passenger count. Plus, they thought of lifeboats as, like, ferries to a rescue ship, not everyone at once.
So, chaos.
It gets complicated. You have the women and children first rule, but even that was interpreted differently. Second Officer Lightoller on the port side. He took it literally, women and children only. Launched boats half empty because no more women and children were around.
And on the other side?
First Officer Murdoch, starboard side. He allowed men on if there was space after the women and children. So you had this inconsistent approach.
Leading to?
Underfilled boats, tragically. Lifeboat number 7, capacity 65, left with 28. Nom 6, same thing. No 15, 41 out of 68. It goes on and on.
Lives that could have been saved. It's hard to think about. But amidst all that, there must have been, I don't know, moments of, like...
humanity. Oh, absolutely. The engineers, the firemen, they're working down in the boiler rooms, knowing it's flooding, trying to keep the power on for lights and radio. The mail clerks, trying to save the mail.
Incredible. And what about John Edward Hart? I've heard his name before.
Third-class steward. He's credited with guiding so many third-class passengers through all those confusing decks up to the lifeboats. True hero.
And the band, of course. That's the image that sticks with everyone, isn't it? Playing as the ship goes down.
They did. 2 bands, actually. They merged after the collision. Survivors remember them playing, first lively stuff, maybe to keep spirits up. Then, as things get worse, Some passengers request hymns.
Nearer, my God, to thee.
That's the one, though there's debate about which hymn it actually was. Some survivors, like Colonel Gracie, didn't hear it, others did. But what's clear is they played right up until the very end. Amazing courage.
Unbelievable. What about everyone else? The passengers, I mean, as they realize what's happening?
At first, it's disbelief. No one wants to believe this giant ship is actually sinking and leaving for a little lifeboat. Scary. But as the ship tilts more, reality sets in. Goodbyes, families separated, acts of selflessness, too. Ida and Isidore Strauss, the Macy's owners, they refused to be parted, stayed together, went down with the ship. Benjamin Guggenheim, he dressed up in his finest, said he wanted to go down like a gentleman. Edith Evans gave up her seat in a lifeboat for a mother with children.
Powerful stories. And what about the third-class passengers? There were stories about them.
Being blocked, yeah, it's a dark part of the story. Their cabins were way down low, long way to the lifeboats, and there were accounts of crew members stopping them, dates locked, maybe to prevent a rush on the boats.
Awful, whether it was intentional or just.
Reflects the class system back then, for sure. Though, ironically, it was also partly due to U.S. immigration rules keeping steerage separate. But yeah, those stories. It's a stain on the whole tragedy.
It is. So the final moments,
Yeah.
what did people see?
Around 2:15 a.m., the ship's angle gets really steep. Water's pouring in through open hatches. Survivors talked about a huge wave sweeping the deck. The forward funnel collapses.
Crushing people.
And this is where it gets confirmed, what people didn't believe at first. The ship breaks in two. The stress on the midsection, bow pulling down, stern lifting up, it just couldn't hold.
That was debated for a long time.
Huge debate. Until they found the wreck in 1985, and it was clear. Two pieces. There's theories about how it broke, top-down stress, bottom-up stress, but it happened, and it made the sinking even faster.
And the final plunge.
2:20 a.m., she's gone. Jack Thayer, survivor, he described it, how the ship rotated as if making a final bow, then slipped under.
Imagine being in the water at that point.
It was -2 degrees Celsius, freezing. And it's not just the cold, it's the shock. Your body just shuts down. Most people in the water, 15, 30 minutes max.
Sounds too.
It's
Survivors talked about.
haunting. Lawrence Beasley described it as every possible emotion of human fear, mingled with notes of infinite surprise. Like a giant scream, fading to moans, then silence.
Did any of the lifeboats go back to help?
Not many. They were scared, thought they'd get swamped. Hitchens on lifeboat number 6, he said something awful about not going back because it's only a lot of stiffs. But Fifth Officer Lowe, he did go back, gathered a few lifeboats, rowed back maybe 45 minutes later, but by then, very few left alive.
And the Carpathia.
Arrived around 4 a.m., steamed through ice fields all night to get there. Must have been an incredible sight for those in the lifeboats. Took hours to get everyone aboard, 710 survivors. By 9 a.m., it was done.
What a scene that must have been.
And then, April 18th, Carpathia arrives in New York, 40,000 people at the docks. News had spread. The grief was immense.
And the recovery efforts.
4 ships searching for bodies, found 328. Some buried at sea, others taken to Halifax, Nova Scotia.
What was the reaction in the aftermath? Who got blamed?
Shock, anger. Everyone focused on the lifeboats. Not enough. Ismay, the White Star Line guy, surviving when so many didn't. The speed the ship was going.
Inquiries were launched.
Big ones. British and American. Both found similar things. Regulations were bad, lifeboats weren't filled, speed was too high, Captain Smith should have slowed down more. Captain Lord of the Californian got a lot of heat for not responding to the rockets.
But the U.S. inquiry didn't blame the White Star Line.
They said it was basically an act of God. Standard practice was followed, so no negligence. The British, though, they said, look, what was okay then is negligence now.
You can't ignore something like this.
And they didn't. The Titanic changed everything. Lifeboats for everyone, lifeboat drills, 24/7 radio watch, priority for SOS calls. They started the International Ice Patrol to track icebergs.
Solace, too, right?
Huge. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, still the basis for maritime safety today. Born from the ashes of the Titanic, really.
And it's not just the regulations, right? The story itself, the impact it had.
It's become part of us, hasn't it? Books, movies, documentaries, you name it. Finding the wreck in '85 that just added fuel to the fire. Cameron's film in '97, everyone saw that.
A story that keeps being told.
And the human side of it, those stories of survival, the choices people made, it makes you think about risk, about being prepared, about how we react when things go wrong.
It does. And when you look at the numbers, it really hits you.
Overall, 32% survived,
Yeah.
710 out of 2,224. But when you break it down,
It's not equal.
not at all. Children, 51% overall, but first class, 83%. Second class, all of them survive, but third class, only 34%.
And the women?
74% overall. But again, first class, 97%, second class, 86%, third class, less than half, 46%.
And men?
20% overall. Second class men, 92% died. Third class, not much better. Only one first class child died.
Shows you the human cost, the impact of class, all of it. So, big picture, what do we take away from this?
It was a perfect storm, really. Warnings missed, speed, bad design, not enough lifeboats. But also human choices, mistakes, and heroism, too.
And it led to changes that made things safer. At least that's something.
Huge changes. We sail on the legacy of the Titanic, in a way. It's a reminder to stay vigilant, to prioritize safety above all else.
Powerful stuff. And for everyone listening, think about those individual stories, the resilience, the sacrifices. It's been over 100 years, but it still has something to teach us about risk, about preparedness, about how we face the unexpected. What stands out to you? What questions does it raise? It's a story that keeps unfolding, even now.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn, more to discover. The Titanic story doesn't end with the sinking. Not really. It continues in every effort we make to make the seas safer, and in every moment we remember those who were lost.
Well said. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
Keep exploring.